It comes from Pete. Pete, thanks very much for getting in touch. First thing to say is please do not try any of this at home.
That's a good sign.
Sister Susie's the producer. This is a very important thing to say. Don't try this at home.
Never.
PG certificate, anyway, you have to be very careful about these things. Dear Father Simon and the Fair-Minded Forgiving Fellowship, I'm an avid listener to your confessions feature. Feel I must share with you a shameful deed. For this confession, I must go back to the halcyon summer of 1969, when I spent many joyful hours as an 11-year-old paddling up and down the Thames at Runnymede in my inflatable canoe. Meanwhile, Mum and Dad would bask in deck chairs on the riverbank, reading the Sunday papers, while Mama Cass played on the radio. All the hit references here.
Runnymede.
Yes, Runnymede and Mama Cass. They would occasionally call me over for a fried breakfast and other welcome treats prepared from our camper van. These were indeed happy times. It's about to get even more Enid Blyton, by the way. On one particular occasion, I'd made friends with another canoeist of about my age, which if you remember was 11, whom I'll call Charlie. We'd spent the morning exploring the local waterways and even laid claim to a small island.
Right.
Just like in the famous Five.
Yeah.
I was a good swimmer, but was developing a dangerous sense of invincibility when it came to boating activities. Later that day, his parents hired a sleek wooden motor launch, and having cleared it with my mum and dad, I was soon puttering down the river with my new friend and his family. Sitting on the front deck with my legs dangling over the bow, enjoying the breeze and watching the splashing water go by. Charlie was also enjoying himself at the helm, whilst his parents soaked up the sun and the beautiful scenery. Is that in the helm? Now, psychologists often refer to our inner chimp, that part of the psyche that urges us to act impulsively without fear of consequence. Well, on this particular day, I think my own inner chimp had broken out of his cage, and then, having consumed a generous helping of bananas, had devised an interesting stunt. It's occurred to me there's an 11-year-old in charge of this boat. Anyway, I was holding on to the front mooring rope. That sparkling water looked so inviting. Here, said my chimp, just slide into the water. You can hang on to the rope and get pulled along.
What?
It's fun. The ride will be amazing. Go on, you know you want to. For a moment, though, sensible Pete dismissed the idea on account of disrupting the family's boating pleasure. However, a tempting opportunity would soon arise. Charlie was quickly gaining confidence at boat driving, as it's officially called, and was now gleefully swerving the craft from one side to the other. Not enough to actually make me fall overboard, but I could easily use it as an excuse to do my inner chimp's bidding. I waited for a particularly enthusiastic manoeuvre. The boat listed to the right and clutching, starboard I believe, and clutching the end of the rope, over I went with a loud splash. Like I said, don't try any of this at home. I was immediately faced with a major flaw in my plan. The drag of being pulled through the water was immense, tearing at every sinew in my arms. The rope was sliding inexorably through my fingers. Worse still, my body was being dragged beneath the hull. This was it. I was doomed. In moments, I'd be chopped up like a carrot, and there was absolutely nothing I could do about it. Suddenly, a powerful hand had grabbed me under the armpit. As the last few inches of rope slipped through my fingers, I was hauled, gasping, back into the boat and dumped sprawling on the deck like a freshly landed halibut. Charlie's dad, who had undoubtedly saved my life, was red-faced with anger, not to mention the effort of dragging me on board. He rounded on the hapless Charlie. Do you see what you did? They all spoke like this in 1969 in Runnymede. He yelled, dealing his son a swift clip round the ear different times, Father Simon. You could have drowned him, you blithering idiot. That was the swear phrase
Yes,
of
it was.
the year.
Yes.
As his mother joined in the tirade, the unfortunate Charlie started howling his eyes out, enduring further criticism upon his questionable boat handling skills. I, on the other hand, became the recipient of much sympathy, tea and plenty of biscuits, and was soon wrapped in soft toweling in case I became too cold. I was starting to feel really bad for Charlie, who had not only been relieved of further skippering duties, but had also been threatened with the loss of several weeks' pocket money. By now, things had gone way too far for me to admit that I had deliberately fallen from the boat. And so, Father Simon, I must firstly thank Charlie's dad for his heroic, life-saving feat. which nearly gave him a heart attack, probably dislocating his shoulder in the process. Secondly, to beg the forgiveness for the blame of the blameless Charlie, who, if he's listening, will surely remember this eventful day, because I have never fessed up until this moment. It was a most unforgivable act of reckless stupidity. I've carried this weighty burden of guilt for over 5 decades. It's finally time to throw myself on the mercy of your righteous team. I still enjoy canoeing, says Pete, on the water in general, but I tend to keep my inner chimp on a tighter rein these days. And jolly good, I would say, for that, because it's a jolly good, what is it, a jolly good? It's a jolly good idea, indeed, to keep the inner chimp totally under control.
Yeah.
Pete let his friend down, the 11-year-old who was steering the boat. Anyway, Sister Susie, the voice of responsibility speaks for the nation.
Well, Pete, you were only 11. So you know, maybe you didn't know what you were doing, but I have a feeling you did know what you're doing, and you should have listened to sensible Pete, who was talking, and but didn't listen, did you? And I'm afraid after all you should have admitted it. Poor Charlie.
Poor Charlie.
Poor Charlie. So I'm afraid not forgiven from me.
Brother Matthew, what do you say?
The 60s, when we let 11-year-olds drive our boats, apparently. I mean, it's far too easy to blame the parents here, but what on earth is going on? Oh, we'll just let our preteen son drive the boat around Runnymede. Oh, is it a motorboat? Oh, yeah, that's fine. And we've got someone who's sitting on the prow, or whatever that bit of the boat is, holding onto a rope. Pete, there is nothing to forgive. You fell in, and you might claim that you jumped in, but I think we can all. I think we're all pretty much agreed that you fell in, and therefore I choose to forgive.